Hey, it's Erin. There seem to be quite a few fitness myths floating around, and I thought we would do a quick video on debunking the top 6 fitness myths that I found lately. And the first one I want to start with is something that I believed up until pretty recently, and that is the anabolic window. So I thought that in order to maintain results or see better results, that I had to get a shake or some food in within an hour of training. Otherwise, those gains would be for naught. Well, research has come out and shown that there is, in fact, no anabolic window, that overall caloric intake, overall protein intake throughout a 24-hour cycle or even on a weekly cycle is going to be the most important thing. Now, the only caveat here that I can see is that if you are in a caloric deficit and you're burning more calories, of course, than what you're taking in. So at that point, it could be beneficial for you to get a shake or something within 2 hours of training, just to replenish those energy stores and make sure that you do not go catabolic or go into a negative nitrogen balance, which could cause muscle loss. But we're talking on such a small scale, and generally speaking, the anabolic window does not exist. All right, myth number 2, you can tone your muscles. So there's no such thing as toning. Toning was actually invented by marketers. And it's brilliant because I think almost every woman wants to tone. Now, this just comes down to 2 factors: the amount of muscle that you carry and your current body fat percentage. So if you're carrying a good amount of muscle and you would like to have more muscle definition, this simply equates to losing a bit of body fat to reveal those muscles. Now, if you do not have a decent amount of muscle to be able to reveal, then ideally you'd want to build some muscle and lean down. You can work on recomping, or you can go through a lean bulk phase for about 90 days and then do a little cut to reveal your work. And that is what they mean by toning. So you gotta have a low level of body fat percentage, still healthy, mind you, and a good amount of muscle a good amount of muscle mass. All right, myth number 3. You must do static stretching before your workout. Now, when I ran track at the University of Florida, we would spend 30 to 45 minutes on the field stretching. We would do static stretching, and during that time, I was a multi-eventer, so I did high jump, long jump, shot put, javelin, 100-meter hurdles, 200 meters, 800 meters, all of them. And I used to strain my hamstrings all the time, and I never could figure out why. And as it turns out, that you do static stretching before training, it's going to potentially cause micro tears in the muscle. And whether you're training for speed or going into the weight room, this type of training also creates micro tears in the muscle. And this is totally fine. Both are totally fine on their own. But typically, if you're going to do stretching before a workout, you want to go through an active range of motion. So you don't want to do stretch and hold. You want to do things like leg swings, hip circles, and warming up in that fashion in a more quick, dynamic way. And save the static stretching for the end, because again, you're going to create some micro tears while you work out, and you can limit your chance of injury by not doing those static stretches beforehand. All right, myth number 4. Low carb diets are the best for fat loss. So, as it turns out, the best way to lose fat is to be in a caloric deficit. Now, it will not matter what you put into your mouth as long as you're burning more calories than you're taking in. Now, if you think about it, satiety plays a big factor here, because if you're eating nothing but snacks and junk food and you're low calorie, let's say you are below what you're burning, you're still going to be hungry all the time because the foods are not satiating. So, if you're doing some sugary processed stuff, you're just going to burn right through it. So you do want to make sure that you're getting enough protein, and typically carbs are really good for making you feel good, potentially helping you maintain that muscle mass, giving you some energy. And of course, you do need essential fats as well. So eat how you like to eat. And that is just, if you're on a high carb diet, be in a caloric deficit, you're gonna lose fat. If you're on a low carb diet and you're in a caloric deficit, you're gonna lose fat. So just keep that in mind. And I think that that makes things a lot easier. And I know when I first started getting into it and when I was getting ready for my very first show, it was recommended to me to basically just eat tuna and broccoli or beef and broccoli, and there was really no carb in any of my meals, and I was miserable. So by having a little bit of carbs, if you can take them, can help you push through the workout, but just make sure that that fuel source is there, whether it's carbs, whether it's fats, or a combination of both. You just want to make sure that your overall energy balance is leaning towards burning more calories than you're taking in, and you're going to be good to go. Okay, moving on to myth number 5. You must be sore in order to make gains. Now, soreness is a very, very personal thing, and some people get very, very sore. Some people never get sore. And this is a question I get pretty often is, I'm not sore, am I gonna see progress? Well, if your goal is muscle gain, as long as you're working towards progressive overload, that means you're challenging your muscles almost every single week. You're either increasing volume, or you're increasing weight, or you're increasing difficulty of an exercise. This is going to lead to gains, assuming that you're eating around maintenance, maybe a little bit more in order to allow for muscle gain. Now, keep in mind that soreness actually comes from the electrical pain threshold of the muscle fascia itself. So it's not even coming from the muscles. It's coming from kind of a pain receptor. And so this can be helpful the next time you're sore, and understanding that soreness is more related to the amount of stress that you put your body through and your personal reaction to the amount of stress that you put your body through. So if you're one of those people who never get sore, you can feel pretty good about that. If you always get sore, you can also feel pretty good about that, probably after an Epsom bath soak though. All right, moving on to myth number 6, our last one. Abs exercises will give you abs. So this kind of goes back to the whole toning idea. You cannot spot reduce. So just by doing crunches, we're not able to remove that fat. We're not able to really reveal anything. An overall reduction in body fat percentage is going to reveal abs. Now, abs are something that all of us have. You can kind of sit back and do like a crunch in your chair, and you can feel the six-pack or that rectus abdominis. The way that I would recommend being able to show your abs a little bit more, if you feel like you don't have those 3D abs. So let's say you want them to protrude a little bit more. Yes, leaning down is going to be the answer for making your overall midsection look more shredded, but you can actually do weighted abs, and this is going to build up that muscle. So take an assessment and see if it's in fact the level of body fat that you have, the layer over your abs, if this is causing you to not see your abs, or it could be not having enough dimension, not having enough actual muscle mass in the abs. I'm not necessarily a fan of doing heavy weighted abs exercises to build out the abs to make them look a bit more blocky, because for obvious reasons, as you're building up the muscle, it's getting larger. It can make the waist appear just a bit more blocky. So just to keep in mind, just do that assessment on yourself. And I would always suggest leaning down a little bit to see what kind of definition you can come up with. And then keep in mind too, as a female, you're probably gonna be able to see those upper abs, maybe the upper 2, relatively easily. It's those bottom 2 abs that typically are not visible readily, and you may have to get to an almost unhealthy body fat percentage in order to see those, and then it may not be worth it, unless you're getting on stage. Are there any fitness myths that I missed? Is there anything that you have believed up until recently? I think it's really important to look at studies, stay up to date on the research, and really important to look at the meta-analyses of some of these studies too, because one study in particular, someone can cherry pick certain statistics. And there's a saying, I love it: statistics are like a light post to a drunk man, more for leaning on than for illumination. So make sure that any articles that you're reading, they're not using the stats to lean on. They're using the stats to show you some of the studies. Always make sure to look at who's funding those studies too, because you can get into a situation where a supplement company is sponsoring a study, and so it's going to put a little bit of a bias onto that study, I would think. And don't ever discount your anecdotal evidence. So if you have tried something and it works for you, keep doing it. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of right ways to do something, and it's really important that you study yourself and you understand your body and your mind and what works best for you, and know that that could be dozens up to 100 different ways to do the right thing. That's it for this time. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I'd love to have you a part of the Fit Fam. Thanks for watching. Train hard, y'all.